We have connecting our panel discussion speakers who will be just right away. Our panelists are preparing, and we will be talking about the mining in CIS, Asia, and North America, the differences, pros and cons, and of course the potential. We have already heard a lot of interesting info about the Chinese market, about the Asian market, about some insights from Europe, what happens maybe in the US and other parts of the world. So stay tuned, because right now we will cover almost the whole world of mining. I especially like to underline the fact that the geopolitical issue is also on the table. As one of the speakers has said, there's still a very big chance, a very big threat of attack 51. All miners or all cryptonists know what I'm talking about. So of course the geopolitical status is also important for all of us. So basically I am just receiving some info from our organizers that they are preparing to open our panel discussion just in a few moments. And let me introduce you the moderator of this panel discussion. This is Sharif Alayarov, the regional sales director at Matrixport. So Matrixport is a digital financial services platform. They provide trading services, storage of digital assets, and cryptocurrencies. They are headquartered in Singapore and also have offices in Russia, Sweden, and Hong Kong. So Sharif Alayarov, can you hear me?
Yes, I do hear you. Thank you for introduction.
Perfect. Yes, Sharif. By the way, Sharif speaks English, Chinese, Russian, Turkish, Uzbek. He's like speaking almost all the languages that we are needing right now to moderate all this panel thing in order. So Sharif, please introduce your guests and start this splendid, wonderful, and fascinating panel discussion.
Thank you again, George, for introduction. It's a really brilliant, organized conference. It's not my first crypto conference, but I always feel a bit nervous before. Let me just quickly introduce myself personally. I spent 6 years in China by leading sales and BD for Bitmain. So I have experience with the mining industry, not only in China, but also around the world. Last year, I spent the BD in USA. Now I'm doing Matrixport for Russia CIS market. So we have today like 6 people in our panel discussion. The first is Philippe Modnov. He is the CEO of Lazum. I personally know him. I know that they have some projects in Lipetsk. I'm sure later he will talk about it. The second one is Jason Zhuang, the CEO of the BTC.com. He just had his very good presentation. I really like it, especially about the earnings. It's when there is a number, the people always like it. The third one is Igor, our good friend from Bratsk, Irkutsk region, and his company called BitRiver. The fourth, our participant, he is Artem Yeremin. He is the big warehouse boss, Chilkut. Welcome, Artem. And the fourth one is Daniel Johnson from Iceland. I think we had the chance to meet Daniel before in Germany. Hi, Daniel, welcome. You are muted. Daniel, you are muted. Yes, please unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks, Sharif. Nice to see you.
Yeah. So welcome, guys, everyone. I'm sure everyone is here. So we have, as George mentioned, we have like 4 big topics today to discuss. And let me start with the first one, and then we will slowly move to each of one. And if you guys feel convenient, you can add your comments. First, my question, I think it will go mostly to Igor, probably, and maybe Philippe and Artem also can add it. So Irkutsk, I have been to Irkutsk probably 3 or 4 times. I know, Igor, you are from there. It's a beautiful place with the Baikal Lake. The first question is that in Russia, the concentration of miners are all in Irkutsk region. And We just want to know, it's Irkutsk, Bryansk. We just want to know why is that, and what are the main challenges in that region? Igor, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure, Sharif. Thank you very much. And so there are several reasons for high concentration of miners in Irkutsk region. First of all, it's electricity price. There is a huge overcapacity of relatively cheap hydropower electricity, hydropower in the region. That's why a price for kilowatt hour in the region is pretty low. Second reason is that climate. Climate is pretty good for mining. It's cold. The winter in the region is relatively long. But like starting from the very beginning, why we came to the Irkutsk region, the main reason for that was availability of power at a relatively low rate and very supportive environment in the region from local authorities, from regional authorities, and from energy companies. So those reasons were kind of driving factors for us to come to the region to build our data center there.
Okay, so today I heard there was a question from one of the participants from Japan about the Kazakhstan. So what would you reply if these questions would come to Russian? What are the main challenges and what is the government support or maybe bureaucratic or maybe some bribes going there?
I would say that the overall environment was very friendly for us. We didn't meet didn't face any challenges with bureaucracy or with bribes. So I would say that environment overall and support from the energy company EN Plus in particular was like fascinating for us and very welcoming environment overall in the region, in the town. So we didn't meet any bureaucracy or corruption in the region.
Perfect. Philip, I know you're doing some project in Lipetsk, which is also in the Russian Federation. What would you add also about the challenging of mining in Russia? You have to unmute yourself, please.
Hello. Yes, I have a project in Lipetsk. It's a special economic zone with very good, very nice preferences for mining and other activities. For example, we have zero VAT for import equipment. Also, we have very good price for electricity because we are working with federal sales company and the price down to 2 cents per kilowatt hour. And what about Russia and mining? Firstly, we have different troubles, of course, with our environment, with our political and other activities with cryptocurrency. But in the same time, we have interesting possibilities for export of hashrate. And for very nice price for electricity.
Okay, thank you very much. Artem, I know you're doing some business with the mining equipment. What would you add about the mining in Russia as well?
Good morning. Hi, guys. Sorry for late, some troubles with connection. We are doing selling machines. We're like a distribution company in Russia, so we have direct contracts with the most famous vendors, and we have a biggest warehouse in Russia. So okay. Everyone can buy any miner.
Any difficulties you face when you do or bring the miners to Russia?
Actually, no. No, because no any customs fees need to pay, and it's really easy to make all permits, all certificates. If you able to do this, it's okay. It's like usual computer server or personal computer.
Sure. Yeah, I used to do that business probably for the last 5 years. Yeah, very familiar with the Russian market. So
yeah,
it's
yeah, it's cool. The main problem
yes,
is warranty service, because all vendors have their own contracts with assembling factory, and they have to send these machines if it's broken to assembling factory. And with Russia, it's very difficult or almost impossible, because it's some difficulties with custom clearance of used broken machine, and the main important thing is difficulties with bring it back after repair, because
Okay, thank you very much, Artem. Yeah, I think we covered most of the things about the Russia. I don't. If you guys want to add something, you can let me know. The next question goes to Kazakhstan, because Kazakhstan now is growing very fast in mining business. So the question is that now Kazakhstan is actively supports mining direction. Is it so? So I see here, like probably for some of the speakers to comment about the Kazakhstan might be difficult, but Igor, if you have something to tell, or Philippe, you can tell. And I also have my personal comments on it. I will comment after your comments.
Yeah, so first of all, we know that VAT situation and import situation in Kazakhstan is very supportive for bringing mining equipment to the country. This would be probably the biggest pros of doing mining in Kazakhstan. At the same time, and which is very important for many of our customers, particularly large institutional customers from Japan, from the United States, from Europe, there is a big difference between Russia and Kazakhstan in terms of source of electricity. In Russia, we're using sustainable hydropower as compared to Kazakhstan, which is using coal-fired power plants, which is not that sustainable. We know that many of our clients really care about that. That's why I'm mentioning this big difference between those two countries. In terms of electricity price, if we compare Kazakhstan and Irkutsk region, there is no substantial difference here. Prices in Irkutsk region are somewhat cheaper than in Kazakhstan, but like biggest difference is like source of power and situation with VAT. Situation with VAT is different in Kazakhstan, but we help our customers in Russia to solve it as well. And in Lipetsk, there is no such a problem as well. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Philippe, Artem, any comments about that?
Maybe from my side about Kazakhstan and import VAT for mining equipment. Yes, it's for all country of Kazakhstan. You can have zero VAT for importing of mining equipment, but without resale. It's only for internal equipment.
Yes. That's good. Yes, for previously also I had experience with working with some of the big companies in Kazakhstan. As we previously today heard also about the MineInvest, they do their operation. Besides MineInvest, there is a very big company called Energix and some other companies which doing, and probably according to my calculations, it's over about coming close to 400, 500 megawatts in total now already running, which is quite big. I think after China, Russia, US, maybe Kazakhstan will get somewhere like in the top places as well. The government is easier to talk with, and the situation in country is very well. Yeah, it's but as Igor mentioned, yeah, the most of the power comes from the coal, which is probably is not green energy. In future might have some issues, but at the moment now, yeah, it's, and the electricity price, according to my information, it's 2.8 US cents income electricity, and the hosting price they give about 4.5 cents. I think we covered Kazakhstan, and if we don't have anything to say more, we can move to another biggest area probably, and Jason might be a biggest participant of this point, Asia. So China, according to the Cambridge research, which was recently published, that China has the first hash rate availability in the world. I know it's also, and I remember in 2016, there was a 16, 17, there was an interview and the movie made by Bitcan company, where the people were asking why the China is the leading platform. Jason, you can give your comments, and after, if you leave me, I can give you also my shares.
Okay. So we share some data for the Cambridge research about mining hash rate distribute with other mining pools. So I think this data is quite accurate based on current situation because it's provided by 3 major pools. So I think China's leading in the hash rate distribution since starts from many years ago, because first all the miners are produced mainly in China, and China we have a lot of cheap electricities all of different places. So like Shanxi is a coal-based power, and it's Sichuan, it's hydropower based, and also Xinjiang. So with so many cheap electricities and resources available, I think it's quite common. China becomes a mining hub of the world, and I think not in China. Not is all the miners are not all from local miners. I think many customers or miners are actually coming from other countries, so they have mining facilities in China. But how should we say it's Chinese hashing power, or it's like, for example, US hashing power?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think also the efficiency in China is also big lead, because the market and all the other supporting chains like hosting facilities, repairing services, all this business, and also I think secondhand miners. I think all these business are quite mature in China, and it's very convenient. You can always find all these available resources, and I think just overall environment for mining, I think it's still better. I know there are other places global wide, they have even cheaper electricity price, or even cold weather. But for now, the whole environment, the best place is still China. But I think it could be changed. I think last year, many people are concerned about the policy issues in China. Last year, the Chinese government is saying that mining is an obsolete business and should be get rid of the market. But this year, it's changed almost the opposite way, as the local government are welcoming the mining services. But I think people were still worried that these policies are not that stable. So if you want your business to be safe and stable, you definitely should choose or considering some alternative options.
Yes, James, I think your comments are really good. Let me also tell, as I mentioned, I spent 6 years in China, and probably I visit most of the mining farms in China. It's Sichuan, it's Neimongo in Inner Mongolia, it's Xinjiang, and then there was some mining farms around, even Beijing. I saw them. So why the China is always leading in the hash rate? First of all, I think it's because of the national interest, right? The Chinese people like to, I wouldn't call it gambling, but people like to invest and risk it, because like in 2015, when I just joined Bitmain, I'm sure nobody wanted to buy S4 or S5 like now. There was some customers, but not that many people were buying because they were afraid to spend money into something which they really want. But in China, it was like, first. Secondly, in China, the logistic is very cheap, right? To send something from Sichuan in winter to Neimongo, in Inner Mongolia for the coal electricity is very cheap, because the labor is very cheap. People coming, taking the miners, putting in the box, sending it into another region. Then after some time, sending it back. It's very fast. It takes like 3-4 days to move mining farm. And the third one, of course, is, as I mentioned, is cheap labor. Probably it helps a lot. One more thing which I didn't mention today, probably I will go back to Igor, to Philippe maybe, and then also we can involve Daniel into it. The construction cost, right? According to my information, the 1 megawatt of construction cost in China is around, if we talk about US dollars, about like $80,000, including the transformers and all these cables. $80,000. Jason, you can calculate it in renminbi. How much? I think it's Igor. What would you say? Like, how much is the cost in Russia for 1 megawatt?
So, like, first of all, I want to make some comments on previous questions as well, because, like,
Yes.
we have been mining in China for approximately 2 years before establishing data center in Bratsk, in Irkutsk region. So we are very familiar with the region. And what I would say, kind of natural pros of mining in advantages of mining in China is definitely a supply chain. Like everything is in one place, like supply of devices, repair centers, labor familiar with the mining business. It's a changing in other regions, but China was the first to the game. This is where a huge difference. In terms of construction cost, I would say that 80K for 1 megawatt for China is a little bit too high a price, because like even here in Russia, like 1 megawatt of capacity cost me probably around 55 to 60K, including transformers, all the payments to the national energy grid. And I believe for China it should be even lower, because we know some large operators of mining farms in China, and we did some comparison. We still understand that like transformers, switch gears would naturally cost a little bit higher in Russia, even though we purchase a lot of our equipment for our mining data center from China. We still have import cost, logistics cost. So it's a little bit high, but it's compensated by lower OPEX, operational expenses, because actually if we compare labor cost between the China, even Sichuan province, Inner Mongolia province, and Russia, labor cost in Russia in Irkutsk region actually is lower than in China.
Very good, very good. $55,000 per 1 megawatt in Russia. Jason, what would you say according to your experience? How much was it in Russia, in China last time?
You mean the construction cost?
Yes, including the transformers, land, and all that stuff.
I think it depends on the scales of the mining farms. So like if you have a like very large professional mining farm, the cost per miner could be higher compared with the small mining farms. So it's,
yes.
I think the numbers are close. And I think that currently the advantage in China is there are a lot of experienced teams so who can help you to construct these mining farms, and the speed is also very fast, and a lot of process is already standardized. So everything is just very standard. You can just find all the components you need.
Yes.
Yeah, this is just actually it could be easier to find everything you need.
Yeah, and the Bitmain and the WhatsMiner and all others companies are in China, so it's easier to deliver everything.
Yeah, also for the repairing, it should be faster. Yeah.
Daniel, what would you add about the Iceland? How's it there?
Yeah, couple of points on Iceland maybe. I think I mean, labor cost here is obviously higher than in China or Russia. Electricity prices, I think, are fairly competitive. They're definitely not the lowest in the world, but that's not necessarily the points that we maybe compete on. You know, as we see more institutional investment flowing into the space, more large traditional investment companies putting money into the space, we start seeing more of the problems like you guys were talking about earlier with Kazakhstan, for example, where the energy is not clean, and there are a lot of people who just won't go into those places. And I think what works with Iceland heavily today is that we have a lot of facilities that are already built. So we have one of the largest data center campuses here, you know, in Europe, where I think it's gone up to like the highest it's been like 85 megawatts of mining equipment, and that's all in a proper data center facility. So purpose built for mining equipment. And we've obviously had a lot of companies from all over mining here in Iceland. I mean, Bitfury, Genesis Mining, GMO, SBI, you know, a lot of the big names have placed equipment here, and I think a lot of the time it's in the spirit of also just diversifying a bit your locations, not having everything in one location. So the building cost is definitely higher as well than in China or Russia. I don't have necessarily a finger on an exact value per megawatt, but it's always going to be higher than China or Russia. But like I said, at this point we have 3 serious data center companies that all have built facilities, and so I think when it comes to the climate we're in right now, where we're seeing a generational change in equipment, we have a lot of S9s that are soon to go offline, obviously. I think there are maybe more opportunities in that rather than coming here and building out your own facilities. And if someone wanted to come to Iceland today with 20 megawatts, he could fairly easily find that space. Definitely for 5 cents or lower in a data center facility.
Okay, I understand. Thank you very much for your comments. But also briefly talk about, if we talk about the western part of the world, US and Canada, about the mining. As I mentioned, 2019, I spent 1 year in USA and in Canada as well. Also very familiar with the South America. I would say the US and Canadian mining, after China, it might be the second one in the world because they have quite big facilities there. I mean, I don't want to compare who is the first, who is the second, but I mean, I really saw a big mining farms. In Canada, it's Quebec, it's Manitoba, it's Newfoundland. Quebec, of course, definitely is biggest one. But the Canadian electricity price is cheaper. But what is important in US and Canada, that I call it initial investment, that the investment into mining farm are very high. So today, what Jason showed us in his PPT, that the incomes are dropping. Even with the new equipment, our income is low. If we invest a lot of money into the construction, then what will be our ROI? And especially the machines changing that so quick. Then we need to be smart in investment. So I saw in US and Canada construction cost per megawatt up to $300,000. Yes, the electricity price is 2.5 or 3 cents, but $300,000 per megawatt is quite low. Also, I want to add from my point, as I came from the mining business, so I spent most of my time in mining, but now I'm doing the matrix sport, which is financial. Bitmain, it was a part of Bitmain. Now it's a separate company. What we did personally myself, if I have, for example, 10 Bitcoins, and if I change these Bitcoins and build a kind of mining farm, or I invest this into the mining machines, I will never get back my 10 Bitcoins. I will get equivalent in US dollars of 10 Bitcoins. For example, now it's $90,000 after 1 year. Yes, if I buy now S19, after 1 year, I might get my $90,000, but never 10 Bitcoins. So we might also consider and use quite often my special matrix sport is offering the loans, where we can get the loan back with our crypto assets and get the cash paid for the construction, paid for the building, paid for the transformers, and then after 1 year, when we have our, we can get back our Bitcoins back. As I mentioned, 10 BTC now will never be 10 BTC after 1 year if we invest into mining. We have to be very smart into this, especially in investing about that. Any comments, guys? Jason, Philippe, Igor?
Can I maybe touch a little bit on that? Just further on, the high capex that we're looking at the moment. I completely agree with you. Like at this point today, it's becoming a bit of an issue, which is why my focus would maybe be more on finding places where this capex has already been sunk. So I think in the current climate, it can make more sense to find someone who has already made that investment. Like he's not going to go anywhere. But there is another thing that's interesting that I think we're going to see a lot more of, which is mining operations becoming more mobile and seeking out stranded energy. I think, you've probably noticed the trend in the US at the moment, where people are starting to chase natural gas as a power resource because there's so much flaring going on, and soon they will probably be penalized for flaring, so they need to stop it anyway. So there's almost like a double incentive for some of these oil companies to actually start making electricity and just mine for themselves. And I think as well with the advancement in, for example, immersion cooling, it makes it easier for us miners to place equipment in areas where we can have, not unfavorable climate, or maybe a location that for some reason there's a lot of pollution, dust, sulfur in the air. For example, in Iceland around the geothermal plants, this is an issue. Also part of that is there is a sunk capex. You might be looking at paying maybe 200,000 per megawatt or something if you're doing a container-based immersion cooling mining operation. However, it's not entirely sunk because you can then move it. If the political climate changes in the area where you are, if for some reason the power source dies or anything like that, it's not even comparable to air-cooled container-based solutions where you've basically destroyed the container. You can't really ship it around the world. If you're using immersion cooling, you can still ship your container basically anywhere a container can go. So I think this might be, an interesting trend we might see, moving a little bit away from the high capex of fixed real estate.
Thank you. Yeah, but it's costly, immersion cooling.
Yeah.
But it might help in the countries like Gulf countries or Middle East, where the electricity and the power is very cheap. Might help there as well.
Exactly.
George, do we have still time, or we have some questions maybe to the
Yes, I would like to add, as a Georgian myself, George from Georgia, sounds right.
Yes.
Yeah? So I would like to add just a few words from one of the countries, which is actually in top 5 of the mining top chart, I would say, which is actually Georgia. I would just would like to add that here we have very nice public and private programs to support businesses. 1 in 10 Georgians are actually miners. Yeah, they're mine. I mean, from little miners to bigger ones. I would also like to add that mining in Georgia is not regulated by the state, which gives you 0 tax rate for your mining business here. And I will just sum up with the cost of electricity in Georgia, which is only around $75 per 1 megawatt. So basically, I think it's more than informative, because you have spoken about China, you have spoken some interesting things said about the market of Russia. European market was touched upon as well by our colleague from Iceland, and well, nothing was said about Georgia, so I just added a little bit.
I think we all have been in Georgia in 2018. We Bitmain hold a big conference there, I remember. So yeah, we're quite familiar with Georgia. I'm sure everyone was there. Most of the people today on the panel and the conference, they have been there. Thank you very much about that as well.
I would also, thank you and all the panelists that we had today. That was a really wonderful and fruitful discussion that we had. I especially want to thank Mr. Runets, who was also a graduate from the Stanford University. So it's really inspiring when you see people graduating from such a big institutes and then returning back to their homeland and getting this business done on the international level. So thank you very much for our speakers and our panelists once again, and see you offline, hopefully in Georgia. Why not?
Yes. Gamar Joba.
Yes.
Yeah, Gagi Marjat. So we're continuing, and let me once again remind our viewers and those who will be viewing our conference later on that my name is George Poliani. I'm the founder of the consulting boutique for crypto startups, which is called Crypto Diplomat, and also the head of growth at CoinSpay. So our sponsors are Ukrpool, which is an official partner of OKCoin. They provide some of the best mining conditions to the CIS market. Of course, I cannot go without mentioning cryptoprocessing.com, which is the #1 cryptocurrency payment company in iGaming industry. 2% of all Bitcoin payments are processed by the company's services daily. Just think about it. RR Mine, also our sponsors, the hashrate global asset management platform. They provide renewable cloud mining and trading contracts in one market. Of course, BTC.com, represented by Jason, the CEO. They offer digital wallet, mining pool, and API. They help users make the most of digital currencies by providing secure online tools. Last but not least, MineBest, a technology company that specializes in hosting services and blockchain solutions for its customers. And Via BTC is the world Bitcoin mining pool that provides professional and stable mining services with very low fees. So that's it for our sponsors. Thanks to them, wonderful Terra Crypto conference online, discussing all the opportunities, pros and cons of mining, what's next after the halving, what to mine, the most popular question. All these above mentioned questions are answered and discussed here right now today on 3 different languages on a lot of platforms. So stay tuned, because I am announcing and preparing our next guests. But before I do this, I hope that our panelists are here, because I'm reading some questions from the audience, which we have here. Everyone's here still? Can you hear me?
Yes, everyone's
loud and clear.
Here.
Perfect. So let me continue with some little questions from the audience. One of the guests is asking, what do you mean the energy is not clean? I think it's a question from our colleague from Iceland.
I was just following up on Philip's comments about some of the regions that are actually generating their energy from fossil fuels. And obviously, you know, in Iceland, the energy is 100% clean. If you look, you can find some online charts that say we have something like 6% nuclear power, but that's because of the green certificate trade. We have no nuclear or coal or anything in Iceland. We only have hydro and geothermal, about a 80-20 split of those two. If I wasn't clear, sorry.
Yes, George. George, it means like clean doesn't mean it's dirty. Clean means because they burn the coal, which drops a lot of bad things into our planet. That was the comment.
Thank you very much for your comments, Daniel. So another question from the audience. What do miners do to face challenges such as halving, local policy regulation, and electricity cost? Anyone from the panelists, please? Welcome to, I can repeat the question.
I think if I can touch a little bit on this, as someone who's maybe more on that side rather than providing services to the community. I think we're always seeing more and more tools for the industry to be able to hedge your risk. Most recently, we've seen coming online, I think only last week or the week before, hashrate futures, where you can actually hedge against difficulty changes. I think what a lot of people do in the more open markets, Iceland is a very closed market. We're not connected to an external grid, so we don't have to worry about fluctuating power prices. We make fixed power price agreements. But I know, like in Norway and Sweden, for example, people are hedging their power contracts with futures and such to have an average power price. But then, I mean, each challenge has its own difficulties to solve. You know, whoever coined the term "set it and forget it" for ASIC mining really never ran more than one miner. I think that's pretty clear, because this is a huge and complicated beast to manage. A mining operation is.
Thank you very much, Daniel. As they say in Iceland, takka. The last question for now, because we have to go further. The last question from the audience is the coronavirus impacting the industry, and how is it actually impacting the industry, if it is? Anyone?
For example, from side, yes, pandemic and coronavirus in our country, we have, of course, troubles with working of our distributors, of our suppliers and all, but we have a little bit pluses, because, for example, energy price for April in Russia, in the wholesale market, we have very, very low price, because it's non-working days, and for this non-working days we have low price of electricity. That's pluses. For minuses, of course, is we have troubles with construction.
I see. Thank you very much for this comment, Philippe, and thank you, friends, for this interesting and lively conversation. I think it was useful for each of us. And without slowing the pace, let's go to the second section.